barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. Machines, you are not cattle.
The definition of embrace is to accept a belief, theory or change willingly and enthusiastically.
On Thursday, the 23rd of June 2016, the British people voted to leave the EU. This resulted in Brexit.
So, what actually is Brexit?
First, Brexit means Brexit.
Well, at the moment we know that we've left the single market and we no longer have to contribute towards the EU budget.
And since Article 50 was triggered on the 29th of March, negotiations have now begun. Therefore, businesses need to look to embrace this change that is set to happen. The EU contribute nearly £8 billion to education. If these fundings cease to exist, not only are students going to suffer, but also the universities too. Universities are at the heart of groundbreaking discoveries, especially when we start tackling medical issues. Professor David Lomas, a representative of UK university hospitals, told MPs that if the UK could no longer access European funds, that they would lose their place at the forefront of medical advancement. As a country with few exporting industries, it's important that our medical industry doesn't begin to decline. Erasmus funding is also under threat post-Brexit. Since 1987, over 200,000 students have used and benefited from the experience. A spokesperson from the British Council states that 98% of students report that they hugely benefit from their time in Europe, broadening people's horizons and opening up their minds. Nearly 25% of Erasmus students have met their long-life partners abroad, with nearly 1 million Erasmus babies born to date. One way that universities could look to embrace this is by using outside organisations to help support or invest in their students. The government could encourage businesses to do so through the use of incentives. Erasmus benefits students and offers them a better university experience.
The healthcare industry is also facing an issue with lack of funding. It is widely acknowledged that the NHS is struggling financially. According to the Leave campaign, the cost of an EU membership is £350 million per week. Therefore, it was suggested that this proportion of the membership fee could be spent on other things, such as the NHS. However, there isn't actually any evidence to suggest that this extra budget could be spent on the NHS, and amongst economic uncertainty, it's difficult to forecast what the NHS will actually receive. One area of healthcare that could embrace Brexit is the private healthcare sector. With the NHS struggling, more people may opt to invest their money within the private healthcare sector.
Transportation is also witnessing an increase in their costs since Brexit. A movement of goods company Parcelforce have raised concerns that Britain could face £11 billion in new tariffs on imports. One coping strategy that could be adopted is the creation of a single market, which still allows the free movement of goods, services and people. Although this has not been confirmed yet, the government acknowledged this issue in the Brexit white paper that was published on the 2nd of February. Although this is more of a soft Brexit outcome, if it were to come into action, it would have minimum impact on transportation. However, analysing this from the perspective of a hard Brexit, transportation will have no choice but to budget for increases in their funding and business costs. One way this can be dealt with is by a reduction in staff to ensure companies do not go bankrupt.
Today with Councillor Lee Drennan, and we're just going to get his political opinion on the aftermath of Brexit and what has gone on, basically. So, hi Lee, you okay?
Hi, okay.
First question is, were you for or against Brexit?
I voted to remain part of the European Union. I don't think the EU is perfect, it definitely needs reform. But I felt at the time, and I still do, that we were better working in a multinational organisation that benefited everyone. So.
Yeah.
But like I said, it did definitely need reform. It wasn't perfect.
Okay, great. A vote that opinion that many have agreed with. So, what are your concerns post-Brexit?
I'm concerned on the effect it might have on race relations between different communities. We've seen there's been a spike in hate crimes since the referendum. I'm concerned of the impact it might have on our economy. I know that after we voted to leave the European Union, there was a drop in the value of the pound. I've spoken to a number of small business owners who are concerned about the possibility of having tariffs on things that they import and export between countries. So that's a quick flavour of some things that I'm worried about. Hopefully, we will negotiate a fair deal out of the European Union. I mean, that's another concern of mine, that we might not get a very good deal, and that we might be worse off than we were previously.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So there's obviously been a lot of discussion over Scotland having a second referendum. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we now know that Scotland is going to have a second referendum, unless it's vetoed in Westminster. I'm in favour of Scotland having a second referendum. I think that the Scottish people should be allowed their right to self-determination. However, I don't agree with the breakup of the Union. I think we're stronger together, and I think it would be a massive shame if Scotland were to leave the United Kingdom. I don't think it would be beneficial for Britain or for England or for Scotland. I think the breakup of the United Kingdom would be a very big shame.
Which way do you think the votes are going to sway?
It's too close to call at the moment, and I don't have a crystal ball, so I couldn't tell you. But I would hope that that they vote to remain part of the United Kingdom, like they did last time.
Yeah, great, thank you. So finally, the big question concerning businesses at the moment is, how are they going to cope? How can they embrace Brexit best?
I think it depends on the deal that we get when we withdraw from the European Union. If in part of the deal they don't agree to free trade, I think there's going to be major issues. As I mentioned before, import, export. If there's tariffs on anything that we have to import, export, then it's going to cost businesses to do their work. I don't know, it's already affecting some small business owners.
Yeah.
My concern would be, would the European Union possibly want to make an example out of the UK for leaving, because they wouldn't want anyone else to leave, basically. I think British business might suffer. I've already mentioned the exchange rate of the pound to the euro, and the pound dropped. It does depend on the deal we get. I think when it comes to business, it is all about making money, and if there are markets that are outside the European Union that maybe have been neglected, then hopefully we can expand into those and reach out.
So with us leaving the single market, how do you feel about us regaining that relationship with the former Commonwealth and creating new trading relationships?
I think it's a good idea. I don't think we should ever have moved away from trading with the former Commonwealth countries.
Yeah.
I think it does depend on whether or not countries still have a positive view of the United Kingdom and want to trade with us. There are some countries, because we colonised them and we took a lot of wealth away, some countries don't have a particularly positive view of the United Kingdom. But there are some that absolutely love us, like Canada, there are various other ones. I think it's a good thing, but it does depend on their view and local history and traditions that have grown since then.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Lee, for all your information.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. The ability for students to utilise their time at university and take a study abroad is important to many people's education. An increasing number of UK students have opted to study abroad as to avoid the expensive uni fees. Post-Brexit, these fees could be seen to rise and the visa process could get more complicated. For example, at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, students pay just £1,600 per year, compared to the UK students who pay £9,000. If some students rely on these cheap prices, the increase in fees has the potential to devastate those students' education. Universities therefore need to work on funding, whether it be sponsor or government fed. It can help support those students and make sure their education does not go to waste. There is, however, information to suggest that the education system may not falter quite as much as some are assuming. An article from the BBC states that the EU will still continue to contribute to the UK's education. 24 university leaders across 24 European countries have gone as far as to sign a joint statement confirming that the EU will continue to contribute to the UK's education. They believe it's vital that everybody works together so that no student is affected. The statement recognises the importance of everybody working together and, most importantly, ensures there are no fee changes for students. However, if university fees were to rise within Britain, this could open up more free spaces for UK students and in turn create less competition within universities and create more opportunities for Britain.
Staffing is a major area of concern for the healthcare sector. Reports estimate that there will be a shortage of up to 20,000 GPs by 2020. With the UK choosing to leave the EU, the NHS may struggle to recruit staff from outside of the UK. This has the potential to create a staffing crisis, with over 55,000 of the NHS's staff coming from outside of the UK. Although this may deter some healthcare EU workers from applying for jobs within the NHS, it will open up a vast opportunity for UK graduate healthcare nurses and doctors for applying for jobs within the UK.
Hannah Williams reporting for you on all the latest on Brexit news. We're here with Corey James, who's a student healthcare nurse, and he's going to give us his opinion on Brexit's effect on the healthcare industry. So firstly, Corey, have you noticed a shortage of staff within the NHS?
Absolutely. I see nurses running around trying to do the jobs which should be for 3 nurses in the NHS.
Yeah.
There is a huge shortage of nurses. And not only that, there's also been a big drop in student nurses as well. So new nurses training has actually gone down by like 67% in the last year in the UK. So they're trying to outsource outside of the UK to bring in other nurses, and they're struggling to do that. And especially with Brexit now, the freedom of movement is going to have a massive effect on bringing in nurses from the outside of the UK. And you see it on the wards absolutely all the time. Like, there's no nurses, there's no one available. They're having to bring in agency staff, which ends up paying more money, costing the NHS more money as well.
Yeah. So is that putting strain on the workforce that are there at the moment?
Absolutely. You see, when you're looking after a room of 15 to 16 patients, you should be sharing that responsibility with 2 nurses. And what I've seen is in my short time in the NHS, that actually that responsibility has been given to 1 nurse. And that's a lot of responsibility to take on, not for anybody. I was also working on a specific area where there should have been 4 nurses covering a whole clinic, and there was actually only one nurse. So if something happened where she had to go somewhere else, she had to shut the clinic because she couldn't be there, when there should have been at least 3 to 4 nurses there on that day. So I think it's really starting to affect people.
So is this pressure on staff in turn affecting your patients?
Possibly. You might not be able to give the attention needed to certain patients that you would want to be able to give to them, but all patients are still receiving the best quality care that we can provide. It might just mean longer waiting times, which therefore could actually mean patients are in hospital a little bit longer. But all nurses that I've worked with have always worked to achieve and strive to achieve the best quality care we can give to all of our patients. These people have all come to us in care in a time of need, so we will do our best. I wouldn't say that it is affecting them directly, but it could be affecting them in a way where they might have to wait a little bit longer for their medication, might have to wait a little bit longer to be seen by GPs or by nurses or by doctors. So there is definitely an effect there, but whether it's an actual effect on their health, I couldn't say yes or no.
More stress related.
Yeah, it's more smaller things which, therefore actually probably cost the NHS even more money just because they're not being seen quick enough, so therefore they're there longer.
Yeah, thank you. So Corey, what proportion of the people that you work with are actually from the EU originally?
Quite a few actually. I mean, we do still work with a lot of British nurses, but I actually work with quite a few nurses from Greece, from Spain, from Italy, and they're all really, really fantastic, intelligent nurses. And I actually spoke to a friend of mine who's from Greece, who's a nurse, and she said that even though we see the NHS as struggling and being brought down, she still thinks it's fantastic compared to hospitals abroad.
Yeah.
And for her to be able to show her full potential, she came to the NHS to do that because she didn't believe she could do that in Greece. And she's a fab nurse, and I think that she's acting with credit to the NHS, and I think a lot of people who work in the NHS from the EU are a credit to us.
Perfect. So Corey, what are your general thoughts on Brexit, and how do you feel as though it's going to affect your degree and nursing career?
I'm absolutely gutted with leaving the European Union. I think there's so much opportunity for student nurses and qualified nurses within the European Union. There's the freedom of movement. You can go train and go study abroad in the European Union, which I was offered when I first started this course, which is now a great area. I wanted to work in a few different areas to be able to pick up different skills, which I'm not too sure is offered to me anymore, which is a real shame for any aspiring nurse, really. That was a big part of being able to train for me, was be able to go abroad and study. And I think it will have an effect on my degree because there was certain areas in which I wanted to learn, which I'm not going to be able to do anymore. And I think as well, it was an opportunity for nurses inside the European Union, or even student nurses in the European Union, to come to the UK and see how an NHS works, how a public free healthcare works. And I don't think they're going to get that opportunity. So I don't think it necessarily just affects us. I think it has a massive effect on a lot of other people as well. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame.
No, it is a complete shame. So finally, how do you feel as though the healthcare sector can best cope and deal and even embrace Brexit?
I don't necessarily know if it can embrace Brexit, but maybe a way that it can cope is trying to use the money that we've not put into the European Union into student nurses and the future of those nurses. We can offer them better grants, better bursaries, which we've already seen isn't happening, for the future of our student nurses. Like I said, there's been a drop of about 65% in student nurses recently, so if we're coming out of European Union, hopefully we can fund that money into the future of our nurses and the future of an NHS. And I think that was one of the big things that all Leave voters wanted, was to use the money that we were using in the European Union into the NHS. So we can only hope that that happens. But like I said, I'm not too sure if it actually will.
I don't think anybody knows if it's going to or not. The uncertainty is still not clear.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Corey. Lovely to speak to you and get your opinion on things. This is me, Hannah Williams, reporting for Brexit News. Thank you for listening.
The UK oil and gas industry currently supports 330,000 jobs, with a huge percentage being EU workers. With the potential of a hard Brexit, we need to look to new ways to encourage UK workers to come with attractive contracts and potentially look at implementing visas and long-term contracts. A survey from Forbes.com said that around 80% of people would rather choose an added perk to their jobs than a salary rise. With the potential of a hard Brexit, we need to ensure that we have methods in place to protect our EU workers for the foreseeable future.
Construction is also struggling with staff shortages. It was reported that 66% of construction firms had to turn down work due to a lack of staff. However, this could be embraced by companies investing in labour-saving technologies, replacing manpower with machine. Although this could be costly, it would help eliminate having to turn down work and would in turn create more stability for the business. Also, if businesses do not have the immediate funds for technological instalments, they could look to take on more school leavers and apprenticeships who are more accessible and require a lower wage at first. Even though this still increases business costs, it encourages students to excel in their studies, creating more opportunities and reducing their own staff shortages.
Hello? Is that the drop of the pound coin again? Yeah, I thought it was. The pound saw a 31-year low against the US dollar, with investors worried about a hard Brexit. This may bring benefits to the UK oil and gas industry and encourage international investors to invest in the UK. As companies and assets have become instantly cheaper, foreign buyers will need a less amount of money to buy the same amount of crude oil than ever before. This means that UK exporters can sell their oil for cheaper and increase their profit margins.
Since the weakening of sterling, business investment has seen an increase outside of the UK. This could have positive impact on the trade balance within the UK. Lloyds Bank predict import rates to fall to 1.8 by 2018, whereas export rates are actually forecasted to rise to 3.4 the same year. This could mean that the UK are set to become big exporters. One way the banks can embrace this is by focusing on core exporters. A weaker pound has the potential to grow British businesses, allowing them to conquer international markets. For example, the UK sells £37 billion worth of cars abroad, which in terms of value is the single largest export. This could mean that Land Rover and Jaguar see an increase in progress against German and Japanese rivals Lexus and BMW with a cheaper pound.
For healthcare, a prolonged decrease in the pound would increase inflation, leading to higher prices for medical drugs, goods and other services needed by the NHS. At least half of the products used in the NHS originate from outside of the UK, with a higher proportion being manufactured in Europe. The drop in sterling is going to be a really difficult issue for the healthcare sector to embrace. However, there are some methods in place that can be used to minimise these issues. So, to minimise inflationary risks, it has been suggested that the NHS must gauge a better understanding of manufacturing and outsourcing products. And with this information, they can use the power of competition to help control prices.
Another way the banks can embrace a weaker pound is through more frequent conversations with their clients regarding hedge funding. For example, exporting companies are now receiving more dollars and euros for their pounds, and so are looking to hedge fund their FX rate for as long as possible. An article from Small Business confirmed that hedge funding helps to mitigate foreign exchange risks, protects company margins, and allows them to predict their cash flow more accurately. By the banks allowing companies to do this, they are helping exporting companies truly benefit from a weaker pound. On the back of this, importing companies are receiving less dollars and euros for their pounds, and so banks are advising that they hold off long-term forward FX plans to see if the pound strengthens again.
Interest rates are at a historic low of 0.25%. This means that people are beginning to spend rather than save their money.
One positive that can be taken from this is that business capital is low when interest rates drop, which means it becomes cheaper for companies to expand their business. It becomes cheaper to borrow money from the banks and therefore entices more activity for the financial services. This is important because when a business looks to expand, it usually looks to hire more workers, updates machinery and technologies, and purchases more supplies. This is important for the economy because it increases promotional and marketing activity and therefore creates more jobs in sales, advertising and customer services. Another positive that can be taken from this is that low interest rates increases business activity, and this can result in a stock market rally as corporate earnings begin to rise. A stock market rally increases the money supply within the country and encourages consumer spending, which is important for our retail and hospitality sectors.
Lloyds Bank actually predict that consumer spending is going to decrease over the next year. It's therefore more important than ever that banks and businesses begin to set out contingency plans now. This could be achieved by looking at budgets, trading capabilities, and adopting key risk management strategies.
From everything we have discussed so far, it is clear that it is going to be a difficult 2 years ahead.
However, there are still ways that businesses can embrace Brexit and not let the uncertainty take hold.
Brexit is here and it's happening.
But we should not let this affect our businesses, affect us as people, and affect our future.
You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
What would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life? Well, it's so amazing. As a result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters, we'd like to be poets, we'd like to be writers, but as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Or another person says, well, I'd like to live an out-of-doors life and ride horses. If you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. And after all, if you do really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, you can eventually turn it, you could eventually become a master of it. The only way to become a master of something is to be really with it. And then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is. But it's absolutely stupid to spend your time doing things you don't like in order to go on spending things you don't like, and doing things you don't like, and to teach your children to follow in the same track. And so, therefore, it's so important to consider this question: what do I desire?